Happy Football Sunday, Cerebral NFL fans. My name is Steve Hyder. Right beside me to this side here, I have Coach Allie. And then down below us here, we got Sam coming in. And we're talking offseason, guys. We're talking about the areas of importance for the Philadelphia Eagles to address. Like, what are those key positions where we've got to get better? Because I think all three of us would agree, right, that one thing became very apparent from Tampa Bay. Our talent level is not at the upper third of the league yet. Do you guys disagree or agree with that?
I don't know.
I actually didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Oh, I was saying I thought one thing was very apparent from the Tampa Bay game. I thought our talent level was very clearly below what I would call the upper third of the NFL, the true playoff teams. Those really true, 12 or so real good competitive football teams. I felt like it was very apparent in the Tampa Bay game we're not there yet.
I would agree with that more than comparing us to other teams in the league, because that's a longer conversation. I would say that if you were to grade our position groups 1 through 5, we'd have a lot of 2s. A lot of 2s.
That's a really good way to put it. I would strongly agree.
So, chat, you guys can chime in. I'll pull it up. Let's rip the Band-Aid off, guys. Looking at this, what do you think is the biggest area of need? I mean, your number one, before we even get what is the number one thing you have to see talent brought in at what position group in order for this Philadelphia Eagles team to succeed? I'll let you go first. What do you think is the number one thing that has to be improved upon?
So I'm going to take this a slightly different direction. It depends on your goal of the season. If you want to give Hurts another season to really do an honest eval on him, he needs a bigger receiver. Someone that actually can beat man press, someone that can create some mismatches in the secondary. He doesn't have that now. Yes, he struggles as a passer. He has all season for a variety of reasons we talked about ad nauseum. But if he could get a really good X receiver or someone else that just gets really good separation, that would be very good in letting him know what exactly his season is by the end of season 3.
What do you think, Sam?
I definitely think number one on my wish list this offseason is a bigger receiver. We need somebody that can match up against the bigger corners in the league and physically dominate them. I think that's the one thing that our offense has been lacking over the years. We've had obviously very good tight end play, but it's just not cutting it outside. So
I think I'm going to go off script a little bit here, gentlemen. I definitely think a boundary side split end X receiver. I've been, beating that drum all season long that you have to go get that guy. You cannot walk out of this. You cannot go into 2022 without that guy. I think it's blatantly obvious. But I got to be honest. The pass rush is falling too flat at times for me. I just do not think this team can survive without generating more pressure than it's generated on the season. Some of that is a complex issue. Brandon Graham coming back complicates that evaluation, right? Don't know how healthy he's going to be, but I know when that guy's healthy, he's a good football player. Missing him on the season certainly played a role in things. The beginning of the year, what Gannon was doing with the depth of the corners was just completely conflictual to getting a pass rush. You just weren't holding up the receiver's routes long enough to generate a pass rush. And I do think that can factor into it. But even after we made adjustments defensively, I still feel like outside of a few really bright moments down the stretch from – you could probably make an argument about Teron Jackson coming up pretty big in a few moments. You could probably make an argument that Milton Williams came up big in a couple of moments. And to be honest with you, Josh Sweat down the stretch called a few guys. I thought the pass rush overall kind of fell flat. We got, playing better competition. I didn't see it. And I still think, to me, it's the biggest area of need. Because I just think defensively, this team is done for if it cannot generate a pass rush. And you're losing Derek Barnett. I don't know where Brandon Graham's going to be at from a health standpoint. I got Teron Jackson, who's, a decent 4th, 5th end, probably not necessarily an ideal 3rd rotational guy. I got Milton Williams, who's an inside-outside player that I can utilize in a 5-tech role if I have to do it. And then I got Josh Sweat. And to me, you've got to get better. We've got to get better in that regard. I think that we're really flat at the moment. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think I may be over drumming that a little bit and maybe I'm losing confidence in how important Brandon Graham is to the pass rush, and that's going to help kind of even some things out so once he gets back? Or do you guys think that that's a legitimate, like, we should be concerned going into 2022 moment?
I think you're right on base. Quite honestly, I think right next to wide receiver, the pass rush is my biggest concern. We, as you so aptly put it, fell completely flat against Tampa Bay's offensive line. It seemed like we got very little pressure on Brady, and that was the one key to the game. If we had gotten pressure on Brady, that game would have turned out 100% different, and I doubt that very little. Quite honestly, I think even if Brandon Graham comes back healthy, he's getting to the point age-wise where we need to be looking at replacing him anyways. So if we don't target a defensive end early on in the draft, I would be honestly very surprised.
So what are your thoughts?
One thing that we talked about off camera is the idea of using more odd front and more of a 3-4. I know that Gannon, and who knows about Gannon for next season, he wanted to be more multiple anyway. And I think it's at least interesting. It makes it less. So I'm going to say two things. One, we haven't had Shane altering plays on defense. Not enough sacks, not enough tackles for loss. Agreed with that completely. Need to work on that. Pressures have gotten there. And even in the Tampa Bay game, we got 4 sacks, which is higher than I think usual for most of our games. Anyway, we can put Cox. Let me ask you this. We can put Cox in a 4-eye. We can put Hargrave in a 4-eye. We can draft someone. One of the biggest things, yes, the pass rush is bad, but when you look at the numbers, at least in terms of PFF grades, the run defense was worse. The run defense was horrible. Tampa Bay ran the ball against us over 30 times. That's our game plan. That's what we do. We had that done to us. So I don't want to chase an Ajabo. I mean, I could, like, especially if we went with an odd front and he played more of an outside linebacker in that sense, and we had more, mass of the line inside, I would be okay with that. I just don't want to chase speed for speed's sake. I don't want to. At the end of the day, I know everyone's throwing the football, but you still need to run the ball and stop the run. I don't want to lose that chasing an Ajabo or someone like him.
So just to, how we prioritize it. You guys said an X receiver, really just a receiver, just someone who can separate and win. I said edge rusher is number 1 overall need for the team. I'll go first this time around, guys. I want to give a hot take. Hear me out. Linebacker is a need. You got to get better at linebacker. There is a certain talent discrepancy once we get to the better teams in the league at linebacker. But I want to say this. I feel like there was far more answers at linebacker going into 2022 than what I got at safety. I have no clue what we're going to do at safety outside of Marcus Epps. Absolutely no idea. Like, Kevon Wallace, I don't know about him. Do you bring back Rodney McLeod, second ACL injury, over 30 years old? I'm not opposed to it, but I mean, at some point, like, this isn't a permanent solution. I look at all the things, Anthony Harris. Anthony Harris wasn't horrible. He wasn't as good as we thought he was going to be either. I got to be honest, guys. My number 2 need, safety. I feel like safety is such an underestimated need for this football team. And I don't know that, like I said, I don't even know who the defensive coordinator is going to be next year. I really don't. Like, Gannon getting his second interview with potentially 2 teams, it means there's a very good possibility. I'm not saying it's 100% he's gone, everybody, but there's a good possibility he's heading out the door with a head coaching gig. So I don't know the scheme. I don't know how necessary it's going to be to have, I don't know if we're going to be playing more single high as opposed to 2 high. I mean, things can change depending upon the coordinator you bring in. But I just think safety, you need an impact player at safety, no matter who comes in here to coach as your defensive coordinator. You've got to have an impact player at safety, and I don't think we got it. I don't think we got anyone in here other than, like, an overperforming Marcus Epps who deserves a ton of credit, because I thought, like, what are the Eagles still doing with this? Come on, man. But at least the athleticism showed this year, and you could see that, like, okay, I see what they're looking at. I see what they saw in practices and things, and it started to translate to the field this past year. I think it's underestimated, guys. I really think safety is underestimated. But let me ask you, Sam, what's your number 2 need?
Well, number 2 need would definitely be defensive end. I think right behind that is definitely safety. You're definitely not lying when you say we don't have any playmakers back there.
Mhm.
Epps is okay, but I really would not want to see him in a starting role full time. I think he's no better than a third safety at this point, and that's definitely a position that scares me a lot because it seems that they haven't put a whole lot of value in it since Malcolm Jenkins left, which I think is a large mistake, especially being that we are fairly inexperienced at cornerback.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, Allie, what is your number 2 need?
I would agree with that. Actually, in terms of the list that I sent you, I do have safety there as well. So let's talk about it. I think the biggest issue is really with JG's defense. It's designed to prevent the big play for a variety of reasons that we've talked about, and that is a good thing. It's not just that our playmakers, that our safeties, it's not even that they're not hitters, because they are. Marcus Epps in particular is a great hitter. It's maybe they lack ball skills. You talk about impact players, although I'm not sure what impact player characteristics you're looking for at the position. But the biggest thing is that Ian Harris and McLeod lacked athleticism to play proper high safety, such that they had to play 20 yards off the line of scrimmage on a routine basis, which gave the quarterback easy throws and didn't allow our pressures, which were good, to turn into sacks and tackles for loss, which were bad. So we definitely need to get some athletes at the position. I'm curious, something else we also talked about off camera was putting Ant Harris and or Rodney McLeod in a sub-package linebacker role in a strictly – I know that it's not JG's defense. Assuming JG goes, we get a Mike Quinn or someone that prefers cover 3, cover 1 to cover 2, cover 4, etc. What do you guys think of Ant Harris and or McLeod playing in a box safety / sub linebacker role?
I thought it should have happened this year. There should have been more big nickel. Especially when, look, I like Alex Singleton. I think Alex Singleton's he's a good football player. I understand that they were trying to get those one-on-one matchups along the D-line to help out, and that's why they kept playing that 5-man front. So maybe that prevented us from being able to basically drop into a big nickel type package. And, there are some complexities to the situation that you can say, like, yeah, Gate, if you go to big nickel, though, and you can't put Avery on the line, you can't get the one-on-one matchups with a struggling defensive line to get pressure. So, like, you're making the situation actually worse. And I understand that perspective that we don't know, that could be potentially true. I get it. But I do think that as a changeup, why didn't we see more big nickel? Why, especially when, I hate to say it, but we got ate up by tight ends a few times. Now, the big name guys didn't get us. It wasn't the big name guys that got us, but like some off the wall guys that we really shouldn't have feared kind of got us. They kind of took advantage of us. And I feel like if you would have just switched it up to a big nickel, maybe you would have had better coverage out there, to be quite honest. Maybe it wouldn't have been so easy for these dudes to just run past a linebacker and post up on the end zone on us and snag touchdowns.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts, Sam? What do you think about that whole perspective of, like, 5-man fronts versus big nickel? And, Gannon did the best he could do with the personnel, and that's why we played 5-man fronts, because we needed the one-on-one matchups, and that was at the detriment of big nickel. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think personnel had a lot to do with it, but with that being said, sometimes you need to try things even if you don't have the personnel to necessarily execute it correctly. And one of those things that I think that we definitely did not try enough was the big nickel, as you guys both alluded to. I personally think Anthony Harris is basically the perfect person to play that role on this defense, but they never even really gave him a look there, and it seemed very odd to me. But at the same time, I think they looked at him they looked at him as more of a single high safety when they signed him, because that's kind of what he played in Minnesota. But I think that had more to do with Minnesota's personnel than it did to do with Anthony Harris's play style or his ability to play that position.
Well, so what I remember from Minnesota, from Zimmer's system, is they would start off in a too high base, but he rocked the safety. He would rock his safeties a lot, and he was not he wanted both his safeties to have the ability to rock into the box. So to go from that too high look to go into that single high look, so giving you a pre and post snap, kind of mixing things up a little bit. Anthony Harris wasn't wasn't as athletic as I thought he would be, to be honest out there. I thought he was really good around the line of scrimmage, surprisingly. I honestly thought he played with a pretty tough mentality when they got around the line of scrimmage. But, to my point, can you upgrade over Anthony Harris? A lot. And I'm going to get into the scenario, but I'm going to read my guy Dante Hill's comment real quick because I think this is a pretty good hot take here, guys. Y'all ready for this? No disrespect to BG, but you can upgrade over him. He's not a double-digit sack guy. It's going to look different when we get a Bosa type, player out there. What are your thoughts, guys? That's a tough one, right? Because we're talking about an all-time great in the Eagles uniform. But there's probably an element of truth here.
There is a large element of truth there. It hurts to say because Graham's been so clutch for the Eagles for so many years. But, yeah, he's never really been that double-digit sack guy. But he's been consistent nonetheless. And I hope he does return to the team, to be fair. But counting on him to start, I think, is a mistake.
Yeah. What do you think, Allie?
What I like about BG, and I was talking about it earlier, is he's great for the run defense. And the run defense, it's really bad by the numbers, and we definitely need help with that. Yes, double-digit sacks are great. We should always look for that, especially in a league that favors quarterback play. But so long as the contract is good, so long as his health is good, he's a great team leader, and he can really help with the run defense. He can be very versatile in terms of technique and alignment and stuff. So I think he still has value, but no, he's never been a double-digit sack guy. He got a major sack or two, but never been a double-digit sack guy.
I'm going to read a couple comments, guys, and I want to jump into the first hot topic free agency draft conversation talk, all right? It's coming, guys. Get ready for it because I got a feeling we're going to get virtual stones thrown at us from the comment section. So we got Jalen said, I don't think we are in the upper half in the NFL. It's not a shot. I think we're right around that line, right around that area, Jalen, is where I would say we are. Do you guys have any thoughts on that one?
I did some personnel comparisons using PFF stats and such. Washington football team has better personnel than we do in many position groups.
Mm-hmm.
Tampa, obviously, but our rosters, we've got some good team cohesion, we've got some good team culture, but in terms of the players that we have, by the numbers, they're not very good.
I can see that. iShine chimed in and said, I hope we don't draft a wide receiver early in the draft. We need a veteran free agent wide receiver. I think you do both. And I think that, we shouldn't just expect the Eagles to go 3 straight years first round wide receiver. Hard to expect an organization to do that. But I also don't think that the talent level on this team is so good that if that's the best player available and you still have question marks at the position, you can just absolutely ignore it either. But I would prefer to get a more proven commodity via the free agency instead of guessing in the draft, and then maybe take a shot in maybe the mid rounds, 3rd, 4th round kind of guy, if you're going to go that route. I mean, I would kind of, feel the same way there, Aishan, to be honest. I wouldn't completely avoid the draft, but I'm not necessarily going there with the idea that you have to draft receiver first round. What did you think, Sam? What do you think about that?
No, I definitely agree. I think that we're not in a position to turn down a wide receiver should one fall to us, but I would definitely lean very strongly towards picking up a veteran receiver over targeting one in the draft.
All right, so Randy jumped in and said defensive end, defensive tackle, linebacker, corner, safety, receiver, running back as his areas of needs. And then Bobby followed up and said, we went from 3rd to 31st in sacks this season. Let's talk about this for a second. Gentlemen, y'all ready for this? Here we go. Defensive line. There are some really good football players in this draft class from the defensive line, edge rusher perspective here. Some of the really extreme talented guys like Aiden Hutchinson and Thibodeau were probably not going to be anywhere near in position unless Howie gets super aggressive between now and the draft in terms of trading guys and trading picks and working his way up the board, which I'm not ruling out. I just don't think it's going to happen. But there's always an element of possibility to that. So I'm going to say that as right now as it stands currently, maybe we change our mind come March or April when we have this discussion again. I think Aiden Hutchinson and Thibodeau are off the board. You guys agree with that statement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The next guy, and I think this is a really important conversation. Ojabo is kind of a bit of a 1 year guy. All right. I'm not saying he only played snaps in 1 year. That's not, don't accuse what I'm saying, guys. I'm saying that the production level we saw is really centered upon 1 year. And when I look at Ojabo, the athleticism is off the charts. This guy's athletic, guys. He's going to be good in the NFL, I think. But I'll also say, in the same breath I just said he's going to be good in the NFL, if you're telling me about bust potential, a guy that you could overvalue his athleticism and he doesn't have the full toolbox as a pass rusher yet, it's probably Ojabo. So I can see both sides of this. If Ojabo is there at 15, we know how much of a need it is in the draft. Do you take that pick? Do you make that pick, I should say?
That's tough. I mean, obviously we need talent at the position, but like you alluded to, he's pretty inexperienced and would need a lot of work to get to the point where he needs to be an NFL starter consistently.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he definitely has the tools to work with long term. I wouldn't hate the pick. I just think there's better value at 15.
What do you think, Allie?
I would agree with that more in terms of talking about the player. So whenever anyone evaluates an edge, it's all about speed to power. He's got all the speed in the world, but does he have a power counter move? Can he bull rush? Can he do anything except for beat someone off the edge and basically bend the hips and get underneath a blocker? Does he have a skill set to make him a surefire starter at 15 as opposed to a guy that could be a really good, and not even necessarily really good Sam even. I'm not sure he has the measurables for that, but a fifth piece in the line, a 9 technique, a 7 technique, someone that plays far on the outside that has the speed to get there on time, but isn't going to be as entangled in the blocking scheme when trying to attack the quarterback, especially on third downs. I see him as a plus player. I see him as an additive piece. I don't see him as someone with a full skill set I want to take at 15 when I can take someone else.
I'll say the only thing I would give him defense in is if we're looking at edge rushers, that guy's probably not a day one starter on this team if Brandon Graham's coming back healthy and he's on the football team. And if you have, God, why does it slip my mind? Just like Josh Sweat out there playing. So you're probably looking at a guy that's going to be a third rotational guy who's going to play a ton, because that third pass rusher is going to get a lot of snaps. His rookie season, they're going to play quite a bit. I mean, Milton Williams is a third rounder who was the third interior D lineman, and the guy had over 400 snaps on the season. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that third defensive end role is going to play. They're definitely going to play. And I do think that someone like Ojabo could make a ton of sense, as like Allie's alluding to. We know that there's a couple of special tools in the toolbox. We just don't know how many tools are actually inside the toolbox right now when it comes to the pass rush moves, when it comes to Ojabo. But I'll bring up another guy. Let's go Purdue and let's talk Karlaftis. Love his film. I think there's more tools in the toolbox. I think there's a lot of versatility between inside and outside. If you got a creative enough defensive coordinator who can really take advantage of the way that you can utilize like a guy like Milton Williams and Karlaftis together with their inside and outside, versatility, could be something special. But if you don't have that guy, if you don't have a coordinator, you don't have a defensive line coach, you don't have the pieces to take advantage of that, then are they just competing for reps and taking reps away from one another? That would be my fear with Karlaftis, who I think is a really good football player. What are your guys' thoughts on Karlaftis?
I would have to agree with you. I'm worried that he would take away some snaps from Milton Williams, which I think is going to be a key to our defensive line this year. At the same time, I like his skill set as a day one starter more than Ojabo. Sorry about that.
That's all good.
But yeah, he strikes me as a more complete player right out of the box that could jump in and start from day one if that's what we needed. But like you pointed out, if Graham returns, we might only be looking for a rotational defensive end at first. Maybe it's going to be a guy who starts down the line later on in the season, but hopefully everything works out and Graham is back healthy and we don't have to throw somebody
Sure.
into the fire right away.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think this is kind of funny because it was like kind of right on cue here with Eagles has landed. He said, David Ojabo or Trayvon Walker. I would not mind both. I'm sorry, Eagles has landed. I just kind of like looked below a couple comments and noticed you wrote that, or else I would have played you off of Bobby's comment because I thought that was pretty good timing there. Outside of that, guys, there's only one other guy I think that's kind of projected, and it's as a first rounder, and that's the back end of the first round, which is I don't know how you say his name, a Nick Bear, and the young man from South Carolina, USC, who I do think is a very, very good prospect. I don't know the Eagles would be in position to getting there. That's why I haven't really given him a ton of attention, because unless he really slides down the board into the second round to where we would be in position, which I don't see him sliding from, I don't know, let's say mid-first round, or not mid-first round, I'm sorry, mid-20s, I should say. So back of the first round, all the way down to like, I don't know, I guess we would be somewhere around the 50-some pick for the Eagles to make that selection. I don't see the slide going that far, but maybe he does. I mean, have any of you guys had a chance to watch film on him?
I haven't, no.
You haven't had a chance yet?
I've actually seen more Karlaftis than anybody of all the people we've talked about. I like him a lot. He's probably the person I'd pick, but I'm not familiar with the South Carolina kid I think you mentioned.
So here's why I'm saying I don't think it's going to slide this far, but I also think it could be possible. There's an element of possibility to Kingsley sliding that far. Okay, I'm not overly confident in Drake Jackson. I'm done trying to project USC guys from the Pac-12 on the defensive line. I got burnt by Marlon Tuipulotu. I'm not getting burnt twice. But if you go past him, Bekti from Penn State, you're probably talking mid-second round, even potentially top of the second round. You're talking Jermaine Johnson, Florida State, another good pass rusher. Cameron Thomas, San Diego State, another good pass rusher. Trayvon Walker from Georgia, another good pass rusher. There is talent. The young man Sanders from Cincinnati, another good pass rusher. There is a ton of potential guys that you can get in the second round at pass rusher, especially if you take that one of those 3 first-round picks and trade it back into the second round, or just get aggressive with your second-round pick and come get a guy. I almost feel like, and I know this is kind of confrontational because I said that edge rusher is a huge need on this team for 2022, but I feel like you can get that guy in the second round. Am I crazy? I'll give you first crack, Sam. Am I being crazy here?
No, not at all. I think this draft has got quite a bit of depth at the pass rusher slot, and I think that we can definitely find somebody in the second round. Granted, I'm sure fans won't be extremely fond of the move waiting that long, being that we have 3 first-round picks, but I'm still torn on whether or not we'll actually make all 3 first-round selections.
Yeah, I agree. So, Allie, what are your thoughts? Am I crazy?
No, I don't think so. I think that the top 3 edge players are, I mean, even really the first 2, Thibodeau and Hutch, there are arguably some holes in the game. They're not like, hell yes, guaranteed. Let's, I will sell the franchise if we don't, have a winning season. They're really good. They've got great upside, right? That's why they're number 1, number 2. But there are holes in their game, probably, especially Tibbs, I would think. And so here's the deal. You're probably going to have to be top 5, top 10 to get any of the top 3. Even Karlaftis is probably going to go top 10, right? Based on all the mock drafts you've seen, probably. And So the question is, Ojabo or Ono? And Ono is, okay, let's wait until the second round. And there are, like you said, some really good players there. Some that I've watched a little bit. I'm not really remembering the names you mentioned off the top of your head, but this is a very deep edge class, in other words. And if you don't get the first 3 guys, don't settle for number 4 because he's on your board and it's a big need.
See, that's what I'm scared of too, is that 4th and 5th guy could slide just because of how much depth. Teams might not feel the need to go that 4th and 5th guy early. Where if you were in a less talented draft class, I could see those guys kind of getting pushed up the board just because of how valued edge rushers are. But when you just got a plethora of them in a draft class, I do think it complicates things out. I think it's a great point. that I'm saying that I don't think that a Nick Bear is going to slide down from the mid-20s down to close to 50. But truth be told, we don't know that because, there's been guys that climbed the board nobody saw, like Joe Tryon, where he went way higher than people thought. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I definitely think there's an element to that where you're right. You're definitely right, Allie, that we cannot say definitively with a draft class this deep at edge rusher that there won't be a lag after the top 3 guys. That some of these dudes might go a little later than are being anticipated. And I think that's some of the things I keep saying, because everyone keeps saying like Clarftis is definitely going to be inside the top 20. He's not falling. He's not even going to make it to the 16th pick is what they're saying. Like, this guy's definitely top half of the draft guy. And I've seen some people who have legitimized it by putting him as a top 10 pick in their mock drafts. But he's not there with the top 3 guys. There is a disparity. It's not huge, but there's a drop off. I just don't know, man. I don't know. I'm twisted on that one, where I think that there could be more of a slide there than people think. Now, let's get into it. I'll go to my third position group here, guys, right? So I started off with edge rusher, and then I went safety. And then I didn't take either one of them yet in the first round. So, all right. My third position of need, guys. I'm going to say linebacker. I'm going to say linebacker is my third position of need. And here's why. I still think that no matter who comes in here, sure, linebacker is a far bigger area of need if you're playing Zimmer or Gannon-like scheme, right? So where you got to have a guy that can cover flats. He's got to get out there. He's got to have some movement and mobility. He's got to be able to set the edges of Sam. I definitely think we still need that Sam linebacker. I'm going to tell you who I think could break the trend. And I know, listen, guys, I'm not coming for you. I know that, dude, it's been since 1979 since they've taken a linebacker. You can't feel that confident. Devin Lloyd, man. I feel like it's going to be Devin Lloyd. I think the Eagles are going to pick Devin Lloyd if Gannon is still here. I think linebacker is a legitimate need. I think the guys that you could sign in free agency are going to be legitimately costly. And I don't think that they want to spend the money at the position, but they want to upgrade the position. The way you do that is through the draft. So I'm going to say, I think there's a chance that a guy like Devin Lloyd gets taken if available. And I want to caution this because that doesn't mean we're going 15, 16. Say we're hanging on to that 19th pick and someone takes him before we get him. I do think there's possibilities and things that could go against our favor. But I also think that this draft is not ridiculously deep at linebacker, but I do think there are some second-round talent at linebacker. And I'm going to get your guys' thoughts on a few guys, all right? Brandon Smith from Penn State, I think, is legitimately pretty good. Christian Harris from Alabama, I think, is legitimately pretty good. And I think Tyndale, the linebacker from Georgia, is incredibly fast, athletic, sideline to sideline, probably not necessarily what we need. I think Christian Harris would probably be the next guy I think fits a little better in terms of what we need if we don't get a guy like Devin Lloyd. But I do think that you could still play around in the second round and end up with a pretty good linebacker. So I'm not scared if the Eagles miss and don't take a linebacker in the first round. But I do think you have to go higher in this draft class. You just can't keep messing around with the linebacker position, trying to plug and play fourth round guys. It's just not working out. We've gotten really lucky with one guy. And that's just to be truthful. And to be honest, Davion Taylor, we still have to be concerned about him staying on the football field. Because as talented as he's been when he's on the field, he's missed a lot of time because of injuries. What do you guys think about the linebacker position in this draft class, the free agency market at linebacker, and where you think the Eagles are going to value this thing and like the kind of money they're either going to spend or the type of draft capital they may spend on this position group? Allie, you want to go first on that one?
Sure. So I've only really looked at Nakobe Dean. Is that his name?
Nakobe Dean, yeah.
Number
He's
17.
incredibly athletic. I don't think
really
he's
fast.
I don't have him making it to 15 or 16, but yeah. Crazy good.
He's in a way he's like Nakobe Dean. He's got Ajabo. He's got one or two great skills. He's very good on the blitz. He's very athletic, but there are a lot of holes in his game. But he has enough upside to be worth it, in the top half of the first round. I really like you said Lloyd from Utah.
Devin Lloyd. Mm-hmm.
Devin Lloyd. I really like his film. It's nice and clean. He doesn't, I think, have the same, sideline to sideline speed you would need in a Zimmer, Gannon, et cetera scheme. But He's a substantial upgrade, I think, at the position, and I would be completely fine taking him at the bottom of the first. We have 15, 19, and 26, something like that. So if he's still there at 26, I'd be completely happy taking him with 26. Although I wouldn't be distraught if we took him at 19. He's a good player. I haven't really looked at the other linebackers in the draft yet. And then I thought free agency wise, I didn't see a lot there. I see Anthony Barr from Minnesota as a nice Leo, as a nice Sam, but in terms of an inside linebacker, I didn't see a lot. So,
what do you think, Sam? I know it's a lot to break down, man. It's a lot. I get it.
I was just thinking more along the lines that I haven't spent a whole lot of time looking at the draft quite yet. I do know the free agent market is not impressive. So if I was going to address the position, it would definitely be through the draft. And I wouldn't even be opposed to selecting 2 linebackers in the draft. Kind of like Cincinnati did a couple years ago when they got Logan Wilson and a couple other guys, Akeem Davis Gaither, and I'm forgetting the other guy's name at the moment. But that worked out for them pretty well. All 3 of those guys panned out pretty well. If we could find a scenario where Davion Taylor is, the first of the dominoes to fall as far as draft picks at that position, and then we spent like a second and a third there this year, or a first and a second, although I find it highly unlikely that they will.
Sure.
That would be great in my mind. I think that's something that we've just ignored the linebacker position for so long that the last really serviceable starter we've had was Nigel Bradham, honestly. I think basically everybody else that we've started at the position has been someone who would be a backup on most other teams, and it's been kind of embarrassing, to say the least.
So I will say from the free agency standpoint, I'll go over some of the names I think could be fairly good fits here, which is number one, you can go and take a look at what's going on in Minnesota. They have a change in defensive coordinator. You got a guy that's played Sam in the system before. Like, that makes a ton of sense here. But outside of that, guys, I will say that I'll go with Jalen Williams' boy, who's KJ Wright, incredible linebacker. He's getting up there in age, though. He's like 33, I think, by the time the season starts, and KJ Wright. But I don't know what the contract will cost, but, the right kind of veteran contract I could see. But I'll tell you who I think are the top guys here. Hassan Reddick, 28-year-old, probably more of a pass rusher than a true linebacker, but definitely could give you some crazy versatility in type of scheme. The guy I think could be really intriguing if this were to happen, where Tennessee were to let him go, would be Jayon Brown from Tennessee. But outside of that, guys, those are the only linebackers I know of in free agency that seem to have fits or make any kind of sense for the Eagles to look into. And it's hard to, it's hard to predict that kind of stuff. But definitely I do get concerned about how much some of these guys could cost you at linebacker. And I just know the Eagles' perspective on things where they just don't like to pay a ton of money to the linebacker position. However, let's talk about what they did the year before 2017 with Nigel Bradham. They did bring Nigel Bradham in here to help out with a couple of young linebackers, and they formed probably the best linebacking core we had in Philly for quite some time. So I don't know if maybe they try something similar this year. I mean, none of those dudes were first-round picks. They were second- and third-round picks that they brought in Nigel Bradham to kind of complement alongside of. I don't know, guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really don't know. And we can always make the argument, though, too, that I'm not too sure that Howie was the guy who picked those guys. That could have been more of Chip's staff that picked them. So, it gets complicated when we look at that 2017 season and what we put together in the linebacker room to project that forward. I think that's a little bit complicated. But certainly there's a blueprint, at least, to say that if you can get the right fits inside of a defense, you can see the importance of what a linebacker core can do for your team. I'm hoping that's become perfectly clear after this season, because the minute we put in just better play, I'm not even talking about like good play. I'm just talking about better play from TJ Edwards and from Davion Taylor. We saw immediately the impact that had on the defense, how much more competent this defense looked the minute we plugged those two guys in. And we stopped having guys acting like their feet were stuck in cement and they couldn't move forward, because that was ridiculous watching offensive linemen reach the second level and our linebackers waiting to move their feet until they're being contacted by guards. It was the craziest thing I ever saw in my life. But I definitely think there's a need here, guys. I would put linebacker. I have it as my third need. So far, Sam, you got X wide receiver or just wide receiver in general, and then you got defensive end. What's your third need?
Well, I'm torn, either safety or linebacker. I think an athletic safety who's a real playmaker could mask a lot of deficiencies of the linebacker group, but
Sure.
Also vice versa. I think that we could spend capital at linebacker and plug in a couple 1-year rentals at safety if that's what it really came down to. Quite honestly, I think I'd rather them address the linebacker position only because it's been neglected for so long.
Sure. What about you, Ali? You had just a receiver, an XY receiver, and then you had safety. What would be your third biggest area of concern for the Eagles going into 2022 from a personnel perspective?
So on my list, the third one I put was edge, and we talked about that position a lot. One thing I guess I want to mention to kind of keep it going with the conversation that we're having, I'm liking Jesse Bates III. I don't love him. I see some holes in his game, but the inside linebacker market is so small. I mean, we can even look at draft picks in the second round, third round, whatever. Maybe not fourth, fifth. I think they're complementary problems, safety and linebacker. And I think you guys already talked about when you help one, you help the other at the same time. And so if you can bring in an actual free safety, I know that Gannon is all about the 2 high safety look and, rocking either one from 20 yards off the line of scrimmage. If you had someone that actually was a free safety like Bates, I think is, or someone else, I don't know, Maye, Williams. I mean, the safety class in terms of free agency is pretty good. The linebacker class, the inside linebacker class is pretty much garbage. And given that, I'd like to get a veteran, quote unquote, free safety, someone that plays well deep, and then do some stuff in the draft at linebacker.
Sure. Absolutely. Jeremiah Butler, I appreciate you, buddy, coming up with the $1.99 super chat. And he said, your guys' thoughts on J.C. Jackson. If money wasn't an issue, I'd say go get him. I mean, be honest with you, Jeremiah. If money wasn't the issue, yeah. I mean, J.C. Jackson with Darius Slay, sure. Sign me up. But I don't know how much J.C. Jackson's going to get paid in this offseason. I mean, what are your thoughts here, Ali, on J.C. Jackson?
Well, I mean, PFF wise, he's best in class for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's the guy. If you want another veteran corner, he's the guy you go after. One of the things we talked about earlier was, I think it's called AAV. And the thing about free agency that not enough people realize or not enough people talk about is that people get paid oftentimes 6 or 7 times their AAV. So even if his AAV was decent this year, I don't even know what it is. It'll take me a minute to find it. He might get overpaid by the Patriots or somebody else. He is the best in class. We should, if we want a veteran corner on the other side of the slide, we should definitely give him a look. But there's a distinct possibility he's going to be prohibitively expensive.
I agree. And for AV guys, we're talking about average value over season. And as Ali's alluding to, those are very much estimates. They're not knowns. They do the best they can to predict kind of where your age group is, where your production is, and what kind of contract you would be awarded from other players. But the problem is that the market does get reset at times, and with league contracts setting to go up because of the TV revenue that will come in 2023, you could see some jumps in contract values that people aren't anticipating yet. So I think it makes it really, really difficult to project average values because of that particular situation alone makes it very complex to really, to make any kind of real estimate here. All right, guys, I'm going to come through some of the comments. I apologize. There's a lot of you guys chiming in. It's not personal, guys. It's just a ton of you guys. JJ Irvin, what's up, buddy? He said, who fits us better, Dean or Lloyd? I'll take either guy, to be honest, JJ. Dean's probably a little bit more of a pass rush kind of specialist. He gives you a lot of versatility. Very athletic. Dude flies all over the field. I think Lloyd could be kind of that better coverage piece, though. I think Lloyd's a guy who could set the edge for you. He could play physically outside, and he can go out there and cover and guard the flex. Something that I think we are missing from the linebacker position. But I definitely think that Kobe Dean's the better pass rusher. What are your guys' thoughts here? You want to go ahead and share your thoughts there, Sam, on these two guys?
I'm a fan of both of them. I would take either one of them at this point. But I do think Lloyd is definitely the more complete player and somebody who fits the Eagles a little bit better right out of the box.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Allie?
So it depends on who you're focusing on in terms of building the defense. If you believe in TJ Edwards, if you're completely in his camp, you might want to get Dean to add to his skill set. If you believe more in Davion Taylor and that speed and athleticism, you want to get someone that's more well-rounded, then you definitely want to go for Devin Lloyd. It really just depends on how you look at the team.
Sure. And I agree with what everyone's kind of saying, like, yeah, Lloyd's the better fit. But I think, I think, Allie, I think you did a good job explaining that, which is it depends upon how you're trying to fit the pieces and like where you think the issues lie in the linebacker room. I will say I feel confident that TJ Edwards gives me competent play as a Mike linebacker. I think Davion Taylor, there's something there. I think Alex Singleton is more than respectable as a fourth linebacker. So give me that outside linebacker that can play the Sam. I think you got something on this defense, to be honest. I think the linebacking core becomes a lot better right from the jump. Superhero said, we talk about trading down, but why wouldn't they trade up if, for example, they value that Nakobe Dean kid? It's always in the possibility, Superhero 18. I'm not saying they will or they won't, but it's definitely an aggressive move. And I think you're far more likely to see them trade for a defensive lineman than you will for a linebacker. Just my general take on it. But I'll let these two guys kind of chime in and tell me what they think. Allie, what are your thoughts on the idea of trading upwards as opposed to trading backwards?
I am generally not a fan of it, and more to the point, and I haven't studied this stuff for years. So I imagine Howie trades up after he's traded down, usually.
Sure.
And so trading up just to trade up to get I could see him going after Karlaftis or somebody like that. But yeah, going after a linebacker with that aggressive, I don't think they're gonna trade up, and I certainly don't think they're gonna trade up for a linebacker.
Sure. Eminem, appreciate you, buddy. Eminem joining the Cerebral community, becoming a community member. Man, appreciate that, buddy. You picked a good time because we got a community video coming up, so it's a good time to join, man. Appreciate you, buddy. What are your thoughts about that? About trading up versus trading back, Sam?
I don't see it happening. I don't see us trading up for much of anything this year unless we were going to swing for the fences and go get one of the two top defensive ends, which I really don't see happening. I think it's far more likely that Howie does his usual thing and picks up some picks in 2023 by trading down out of the first round with one of those picks. I kind of hope he doesn't. I hope we use all the selections this year, but I can see why you'd want insurance in case Jalen Hurts doesn't pan out in 2022.
Yeah. Ooh, Jake gets cake with a hot take here. He says, Taylor can't stay healthy. I don't think he'll even be great either. I can't weigh on his health, man. I have no clue, Jake. I just can't, man. I have no clue. Trying to predict that, I'm not a doctor. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a physical therapist. I can't really say. I can say when he's on the field from what I saw, and I understand what you're saying. Like, Steve, we're talking about a very small sample size, but it was really good play. It was really good play for that sample size for a duration of time. What are you guys' thoughts about Davion Taylor? Are you guys starting to become a little concerned about the longevity of this player? Allie, I'll let you kick that one off. What do you think?
I'm not super familiar with his contract in terms of guaranteed money or the length on the deal. I think he's a good player. I think we should always have depth. And I think he could be really good. At the very least, he's good when he's healthy. I like him as an inside linebacker and, next to Edwards, and we'll see, who they draft if they draft someone at ILB. I'm not too concerned. I'm not staking the future of the Philadelphia Eagles linebacker core on Davion Taylor.
Yeah.
Definitely agreed. I think he could be a player, but until he can stay on the field, we're never going to know what exactly he is or what he's going to be. He's just been way too injured the past couple years.
My guy Shonuff said, Reddick ain't just a good pass rusher. He's of a pass rusher. Can't say it for monetization purposes. Get your point, though, Show enough. I agree. He's a heck of a pass rusher, no doubt about it. Mark G, what's up, buddy? He said, Gate, could you see them bringing in a young linebacker via free agency too? But the teams they're on may lock up the top linebackers available currently. So I don't know about how they value the position inside. Howie said some things that could be conflictual, right? On one hand, he said, we have a philosophy. Our philosophy is held true. But then on the other hand, he said, it's kind of up to the coaches to tell me what the areas are that are on the team that's particular to the scheme they run and how this, to make their case of how necessary those position groups are to the actual scheme. So, I mean, you could say that there's a little bit of a conflict in kind of the way he approached the topic. He kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit there with it. It's just the way you want to interpret what he said, to be quite honest about the situation. With that said, I mean, look, who's the guy? I mean, if we're talking about Hassan Riddick, sign me up, man. That guy's going to be really good. I'll take Hassan Riddick in a heartbeat. Is it going to be Jayon Brown coming in to play the middle linebacker? Sign me up. That guy's going to be really, really good. I think it just depends upon who it is. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a ton of really, really young guys out there that, are going to be available, to be honest, that are impact guys, to say the least. But what are your thoughts here, Sam? What do you think?
You basically took the words right out of my mouth. I'm just not real sold on the people who are hitting free agency. The top guys that I think are hitting free agency, I don't really think that they're going to end up leaving their teams. They might actually look around, see what they can get elsewhere, but Hassan Reddick, I believe, will be back where he's at. And same thing with Jayon Brown. I think Tennessee would be foolish to let them go.
Sorry, guys. It looked like I was streaming from heaven for a minute. I had to shut the curtains. Kazir White is a free agent. Yeah, I mean, sure enough, I didn't know he was a free agent, but if he's a free agent, of course, he's in that category of player, sure enough. So, I mean, yeah, I don't think there's a doubt on that one. Dumpster Diver. Sorry, man. I almost called you Driver, bro. My bad, man. He said Karlaftis and Ojubo would be legit good. Yeah, no, I don't think any of us are doubting how good they'll be. I think we're looking at it from the perspective of even in the second round, you can find some really, really good pass rushers in this particular draft class. It's really deep in terms of edge rushers. And I think the Eagles would be crazy not to walk out of here within the top 60 or so picks with an edge rusher. I think it's really hard to do in this particular draft class. But, who knows? I mean, they might covet a guy more so in the third or fourth round. It's hard to say. But I definitely think that within that top 60 picks, you're going to have about 8 or 9 guys that are legit. Legit should be, are going to probably be really good football players. A lot of people are saying it's kind of a meh free agency market. I think it's, there are some real legit guys out there. Look at the safety market. I'm not saying the safety market is bad. I mean, you got the Honey Badger out there, who's technically going to be a free agent if Kansas City doesn't re-sign him. But I don't know how much money he's going to want. I'm not too sure the Eagles could afford it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's part of it too. Is like, I don't know that we're going to have the cap space to go after every single position we want and pay top dollar for each guy in that. You know what I mean? Like, they have to kind of define what it is that they want in terms of that. So let's go with the fourth position of need. So far, I said edge rusher, I said safety, I said linebacker. I'm going to say the fourth position of need for me is cornerback. And the reason I put it down fourth isn't because I think it's fourth in importance per se, guys. I put it down in fourth because I feel like there's an easy solution if you're willing to pay the money. And I don't know how much that money is going to cost. But you can easily resolve this situation just by bringing back Steven Nelson. Could have done it before the season ended and given him a contract, which maybe that hints at the point that they think the market's going to get too expensive and they're just going to wait it out just to see if maybe they're wrong about it. And then if Steven and his agent are wrong and they maybe try to come back again and sign that type of guy. But I also think, to be fair, when you look at the cornerback market, I do think that you can walk away and you can get some guys from this draft class, not necessarily inside of the free agency, but I think this draft class has pretty good cornerback position. I do think that there are some guys that people may not love, but I do think that if you get them in the right system and you have an opportunity to work with these guys, I mean, you got Elam, who's definitely more of a, taller physical corner, plays very, very, very aggressively. I've heard some people say they don't think he's going to be a fit for Gannon. I tend to disagree. We don't know what Gannon did because of personnel issues, so I hold off on those type of reactions. You got McCreary coming out of Auburn, Ahmad Garner, the sauce, crazy good. Andrew Booth Jr., who I think is a very underrated corner in this draft class. I think that there's a lot of options if you don't get a Steven Nelson in the draft to kind of go get that young guy with 3 picks in the first round. At the very minimum, I feel like you can walk away with somebody at corner between 15, 16, and 19. But I'll ask you, Allie, look at this cornerback draft class, and what are your thoughts?
So I like how you describe the positions and the players. I think that's accurate and good. And I think big picture, there are some positions that are better solved in free agency. There are other positions that are better solved in the draft. I definitely want us to target a safety in free agency. And I definitely want us to target a corner in the first round of the draft. Sauce, Elam. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that are going to be pretty good. Just the way that there's depth on the edge, there's also a whole lot of depth early on at corner. And I think that it would be a mistake to not draft a corner in the first round based on the class that's there.
Yeah, and I think one player I kind of left out of here was Emerson. Mm-hmm. But, Martin Emerson out of Mississippi State, I don't know where he's going to go. I mean, he could potentially be a back end of the first, but if that guy's kind of floating around there, you're not the guy that's floating around in the second round, maybe you get a little aggressive and you go after a guy like that. Because I do think that anytime you got a chance to get a guy from the SEC, if the film's good enough, it's not a guarantee. It's never a guarantee. Don't get me wrong. But you feel more confident, right? Like, these guys have played NFL wide receivers. That they've probably played more man press coming from the SEC. So they're not going to be completely lost. But in saying that, and I think this is where it gets complex, Allie. In saying that, I do think that it's really hard as a rookie to play very well in the NFL at corner.
Sure.
And I think it could be a little bit more difficult from that perspective of things. You know what I mean? Like looking at it from that way of like, that if you don't go get a veteran, I don't think, and this isn't taking shots at McPherson, I don't think McPherson is ready to play significant snap share. At least I didn't see that from this season. I didn't see a guy to look ready yet. Not going to say that he can't put in work in the offseason, have a really good camp, and then maybe be in the mix. But right now, I wouldn't depend upon it. So that means if you don't get a veteran or you don't bring back a Steven Nelson, then that means you are going to really depend upon a rookie to play pretty significant minutes in your scheme. Other teams have done it, and they've managed to get by until the game, slowed down for that player. If you got Gannon, you are running a 2 high safety situation. You got a 2 high safety look. And to be fair, and here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to compare people, but the young man that got drafted to Denver played extremely well from Alabama last year.
Mm-hmm. Surtain or whatever?
Yeah, Patrick Surtain II. Yeah, I mean, didn't seem like he missed a beat. And maybe you can do that with an SEC guy, and you can feel pretty confident they're going to step in and be decent, their first year, where other guys have struggled. But I mean, to be fair, look at Steven Diggs, who's another, or did I say yes? Is it Steven Diggs? Am I going with the wrong one here? Because there's brothers and they messed me up. Trayvon. Yeah, Trayvon Diggs, the other brother. Trayvon Diggs struggled with Dallas his first year. Struggled sometimes even this year, too. He got beat for a lot of touchdowns. But it was definitely developed into a playmaker. Mm-hmm. He definitely became more of a playmaker in his second season, taking the ball away, stuff like that. But that's the only fear I have with going aggressive at cornerback is sometimes those guys are not ready year one to play and contribute.
Sure.
Do you have any hesitations on that?
So one thing I'm really looking for and will for the next, few weeks or so is some PFF data on NCAA players on the draft and stuff like that. I'm not seeing a lot of that. I do have a lot of data on free agents, and you've got Steven Nelson in one tier with Zach McPherson, even Rodney McLeod. And then you go up a tier in terms of free agents. You got Darius Williams, Bryce Callahan. I'd be comfortable with either of those, at least taking a look, assuming you're not re-signed early. And then, the next tier up that you have at corner is J.C. Jackson, Stephon Gilmore. And I'm pretty sure we're not going to go that high. So the question is, okay, who are you comparing Steven Nelson to? You're comparing Steven Nelson to who? If you're comparing him to Darius Williams, Bryce Callahan, okay, take a look. Their numbers are better, but they're not a lot better, but they're also going to not be hopefully a lot more expensive. And then it's like, okay, who do you trust in the draft? And do you think that a first round corner would be better than, I'm Even Steven Nelson, is that his name?
Yes. Hard to say a rookie's going to be better than a guy that's been in the league for a while. In terms of where they'll be in 2 years from now, probably. Because I want to tackle this. Name brand, this is not a shot at you because you're not the only person who's expressed this. And it's because the media keeps putting this nonsense out there that Steven Nelson had a really good season. The hell he did. They ain't watched film. They have not watched film if they're saying that. Steven Nelson was a liability for the majority of the year. I'm just going to call a spade a spade. That's people spinning a narrative that is not true by the film. Ali, I'll let you chime in on what you think.
Yeah, no, I mean, you got to look at the film. You got to look at the numbers. McPherson had 1 or 2 really bad games.
Yeah.
But McPherson in broad scope is better than Nelson.
Yeah, and like I said, Nelson's completely respectable. I'm not saying you push the guy outside if there's a way of coming back to that player and then getting a young guy in the draft. But
sure.
I also feel like you can definitely upgrade over him. I feel like there's clear upgrades over Steven Nelson. I thought that in zone, for whatever reason, in zone coverage, he was just a liability. And I think it had a lot to do with the depth that they were giving him in zone.
Mm-hmm.
But when they brought him up at the line of scrimmage a little closer, let him play man, let him disrupt routes, and then had a safety over the top of him, he was able to play what is more to his abilities, which is to really disrupt a route. And in the off case that a guy beats him, he's got safety help. So he's not as overly concerned. But, I mean, he just did not have the fluidity in his hips and off coverage to run that style of coverage. I mean, we just were getting killed that way by him. And you saw like we all, it's just so vivid in my mind when we go to that Chargers game, but like an 8-9 yard cushion on a dude on 3rd and 7, where he's clearly running a timing route, an out route. It was like, what are we doing here? What is going on? I'm Otep. What's up, buddy? He said, Gannon is as good as gone, and thank God. The Eagles should consider Marv Lewis as a defensive coordinator strongly. Lewis can run a 42 or 34, and you don't have to wonder or guess about it. I don't know that Gannon is as good as gone, but the prospects look good for Gannon getting a second interview. But I'm a Hotep. I got to back people down a little bit, man. I definitely think there were some issues with Gannon's scheme that are quite obvious. But at the same time, this guy's not getting second interviews from multiple organizations because he can't coach. I think sometimes, we get too caught up in it and we're not seeing the fact that there were personnel limitations to this team. I do agree that the 9 yards off crap and all that was like, I don't know what he was thinking, but it is what it is, man. I mean, I personally am I wouldn't go after Marv Lewis personally. I don't know who you go after, but I do think we have an internal candidate on Hotep that I would like to see, which is Denard Wilson, who is our secondary coach. He's a guy who's been coaching for a long time. I don't think he's had an opportunity to be a coordinator yet, but he's been in the game a while, and he's a coach that the players love. What did you think about Denard Wilson?
I didn't really love the secondary. I didn't know what to attribute to his coaching. Not super familiar with him. I don't want to speak about stuff I don't know too much about.
Yeah. The players did. Avonte Maddox has spoke very highly of him. Darius Slaves talked really highly of him. I don't know if Steven Nelson said anything about him or not. Ken Dorsey for OC. I don't think they're going to switch anything up in terms of the offensive coordinator, guys. I highly doubt it. Lloyd is a ball hawk, but he's only 225 pounds, I think. To me, look, I mean, weight, I'm not saying that weight doesn't matter, Mark. It does, but to me, it's the way you play the game. You know what I mean? Like, does he play the game with physicality and is he just strong? There's some dudes, like Kelsey. Kelsey's, there's clearly sometimes where he's outmatched by a 330-pound nose. But for the most part, that guy's really strong and he's really athletic and he gets the better of people. But we saw some limitations in this game. Tomorrow night, I'm going to have Caleb and Jalen are going to be breaking down some offensive line play. And they're going to be running the film on Tampa Bay's game. And I'll be honest with you, man. We had some struggles along the line. We had a couple of really standout guys and a couple of really good plays there. But to be honest with you, we got to talk about this tight end play, guys. We definitely got to talk about the tight end play. Angry Eagles fan said, can we have both Dean and Lloyd? It depends on where draft positioning would go. But I mean, just picking one linebacker in the first round seems like a lot to overcome. let alone taking 2. You know what I mean? So yeah, showing up saying like most linebackers say are about 220 to 230, so it's not really an issue. Yeah, it's definitely an issue if you go back to 2-back sets and lead blockers and that kind of game. But I agree. Name Brand said some good linebackers on bad teams that we should look into capitalizing upon. I remember Davion Taylor. A couple of people talking about Davion. So Matt Hatter said Davion Taylor in 9 games at age 23 had 2 forced fumbles, 41 combined tackles, and 24 solo, 17 assisted, 1 tackle for loss. Yeah, no, I mean, talent-wise, it's not the issue. I think to this season in particular, I thought there was a big advancement in the way that he saw the game in particular. Allie, what did you think? I mean, what I thought I saw was a guy that from his rookie season looked completely lost out on the field to when they put him in this time, and I was a little nervous about that. He looked like a guy that was trusting what he was seeing, and he was flowing to the football. What were your thoughts about Davion Taylor?
He was definitely a competent linebacker, not to overuse the term, and he's got some upside, but basically he got a higher floor, but we don't know what his ceiling is. But he got a lot better than he was last year.
I'd rather get an old crusty defensive coordinator like Lovie Smith or Zimmerman. I think some people, though, brought up some pretty interesting takes on that, though, Backyard Birds, which is we can't just assume that somebody's going to get hired because they have to have a relationship with the head coach. And that's the issue is I don't know where some of these relationships lie in terms of that. So it's really difficult to say that. And then you don't want to do anything that could mess up the structure and the balance of the team chemistry. Because these guys really buy into Nick, you don't need a power struggle. So you don't need a Schwartz and kind of like what happened with Schwartz and early on. I should say early on. What happened between Schwartz and Doug Peterson. So, I mean, I think there's definitely some kind of balancing act that has to happen there when you talk about coordinators and stuff like that. So I said edge, safety, linebacker, corner. And then Sam said wide receiver, defensive end, linebacker, safety. You said wide receiver, safety, defensive end. What was your 4th position of need for the Eagles?
I actually went IDL. I think we should get as much. Honestly, we should get as much line depth as possible, especially in the defensive line. I know that Hargrave is great and Cox is great and all that other stuff, and Milton Williams, looks really good. But I want to see us going to more of an on-front, kind of more of a 3-4, and not that we're going to, but I think we can move the pieces on the board better than we have in the past. And if there's someone that's great, someone that can really anchor the defense, I'm thinking, what is his name, Jordan Davis? If we can get him down to like 220, I think he's like 240 now, and he's really tall. There are definite issues there with him playing a nose or a one-tech or whatever.
Sure.
But I'm old school. I really want to stop the run and force people to throw. And looking at the numbers, looking at the data, our run defense was really bad. Well, I can't speak historically, but relative to certainly what I thought it would be. And so if we can bulk up in the interior of the defense too, I want to do that.
Yeah. So Alex, I gotta really disagree with you on this point, buddy. Reddick isn't a good fit on the Eagles. Not sure why anyone mentions him. I'm going to disagree with you because I understand the scheme that Gannon employs. And when you're running a 5-man front, having a guy that's basically an outside linebacker that's essentially a joker, so you're really running a 5-line front, I'm sorry, but Reddick is the exact guy that fits that. So I would have to highly disagree with you there on that point. And then I also think this is kind of a good follow-up, which is we don't even really know who the defensive coordinator is going to be at this point. So we can't really say if anyone's a fit or not because we really don't even know what system we're going to be running. We don't know who's going to be in that. I'm just going to go with Gannon being the guy until I hear he gets hired somewhere. But I do have to disagree with you in terms of that 5-man front. Because I think that's the exact kind of player, if you're going to play the 5-man front, that gives you that kind of athletic ability to really impact the quarterback and really knock him off his mark and make it hard. So I do disagree with that a little bit. Name Brand said, who do we take instead of Reddick? I mean, it depends on what you want to do in terms of what are your outcomes, what are your goals. I mean, Anthony Barr is a Sam linebacker. So Anthony Barr is a good pass rusher. I don't think he's Hassan Reddick good. And he's older. Anthony Barr, I believe, is a little older than Hassan Reddick. I think he's a year or two older than him. On top of that, Anthony Barr, though, probably gives you a little bit more versatility in terms of being a really good coverage guy. Where Hassan Reddick, I think it's a little bit more of a question mark if, his coverage abilities per se. Now, in terms of who I think would be another good fit here would be Jayon Brown, who's they're completely different players here. Jayon Brown's going to be definitely more of a traditional Mike that gives you really good coverage abilities. So, I mean, Jayon Brown, I think, would be a really good fit in free agency if the price is right. I just don't know what the price is, and I find it hard to believe that at the end of the day, Tennessee's going to let him walk. And that's the thing. Like, does that concern you, Allie, that, sometimes we get really focused in on a few guys, and then, when push comes to shove, they end up getting re-signed by their teams? Does that always make you a little skeptical of how you approach this?
I mean, fans are fans, and front office is front office. And, fans tend to stare at the hot girls and get really attached and all that other stuff. Thankfully, front offices tend not to. I mean, the purpose of the show is to talk about things and have conversations. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. I guess what I'm saying is the front office realizes that a lot of these free agents are going to be re-signed by their teams. A guy I really like, we talked a little bit about receivers, Braxton Berrios, for like a really, really team-friendly deal. We need some help on special teams. And so, but the Jets are probably going to re-sign him. Pretty much everybody's going to be re-signed. So this conversation is premature, but it's also kind of fun. So,
what's up, Nasty Left Hook? How you doing, buddy? He said, I'm going to have to check out this Treylon Burks kid I keep hearing about. Surprisingly good after the catch, Nasty Left Hook. That's what stood out to me about him. I came in with an idea that this is going to be like this big physical wide receiver that's just posting up dudes at the goal line. And then I saw this guy being hit on slant routes and comebacks and hitches and curls and things like that, and just shaking free and running down the sideline. I was like, oh, I didn't expect to see that. He's definitely a little bit more of a yak guy than I anticipated, yards after the catch guy. That's pretty much the only insight right now. I'm not deep enough into talk about route running abilities yet. I got to see a little bit more film before I start saying who's a better route runner than another person. I mean, sometimes you can tell off of, a game or two that you can just tell a guy's like a really good route runner. But I don't have a ton of guys this year where I feel like, like layup. This is just an incredible route runner. A lot of people say they like Burks a lot. Must draft a corner. Backyard Birds. Let me pull this one up, man. He said, we need better receiver coaching. Moorhead's guts to go. I'm a little split on Aaron Moorhead, Backyard Birds, because on one hand, I don't know what to make of him. I can't really credit you for Devontae Smith having a good season, because I feel like Devontae Smith is going to have a good season no matter who was the wide receiver coach. I just feel like he's that kind of talent. On one hand, Quez Watkins played really well, and maybe he's partially that's due to Aaron Moorhead's influence. On the other hand, a first-round pick and a second-round pick arguably regressed since you got here. And, I guess with the first-round pick and Rager, he's only known Moorhead as his wide receiver coach in the NFL, but those guys got worse this year. They didn't get better. They got worse. Argumentatively, they were worse players. I don't really know what to make of them. I mean, do you have any kind of like real opinion here about Aaron Moorhead?
No, not really. I know I'm going to agree with what you're saying. Devontae Smith is Devontae Smith. He's going to be great no matter who the receivers coach is. I think Quez had a really good season. We did a show where we talked about his numbers and his analytics and showed some film, and he definitely has some promise. So maybe that means he's good. But then, like you said, I mean, Rager, even Jay Jaw, so some of these other players, I am uncomfortable saying that he's great or even very good, because our receivers aren't very good. And the only receivers that we have that are very good, one of them is a tight end and the other one is a first-round draft pick. So I'm not saying replace the guy, but I haven't seen enough to be like, yeah, he's the guy.
Yeah. What's up, Jason? How you doing, buddy? He said, the more I watch Allen Robinson, the more I love him. His route running, the big target as an X receiver, strong hands, just a perfect complement to Devontae Smith. I agree. I'm just really concerned about the price, Jason Glover. I have no clue how to value Allen Robinson right now. He didn't have the most productive season, I believe, because of injury. But when you watch his film, you're right. He's He would be a really good complement. Now, I think Mike Williams would be a good complement as well, but I definitely think Allen Robinson is a step above Mike Williams in terms of what he is as a player. Allie, do you feel differently about Mike Williams and Allen Robinson in terms of, Allen Robinson just being clearly a better player than Mike Williams, although Mike Williams is clearly a good fit for the Eagles?
I haven't seen a ton of tape. I have looked at the numbers, and like you said, I mean, it could be due to injury. And who knows about it? Williams AAV is a good bit cheaper, but who the hell knows about that, right? That's just an estimate. But he's also ranked higher by PFF. So I would look at Williams first. But especially last year, the year before, I mean, he's been in the league a bit. I've seen some really good things, of course, at Chicago too. And maybe in a different setting, he'd be a lot better. I definitely want to give him a look, but he might be super expensive, and there might be better deals out there with better players. And I haven't seen enough from Robinson to be like, yeah, he's much better than Williams, or he's a much better fit. He's good. He's very good, but I haven't seen enough of it to be definitive about
it. Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of the hard thing of trying to judge them. I will say that Mike Williams has a personal connection back to the Eagles because of Sirianni coaching there. And then, of course, Steichen coached there it's now Los Angeles, but it used to be San Diego, the Chargers. So, I mean, there's some element of that. And I think this is a good one, too. I just don't know if we're going to be in position, Mad Hatter. I love George Pickens out of Georgia. Hate that he ended up having the knee injury, because I definitely think if he didn't have the leg injury, this is a first round talent. Now, you're dealing with health issues. You got a lot of needs on this football team. It's the best player. It's the best player available argument, right, Mad Hatter? It's the best player available. Is he the best player, honestly, on your board, and you're sitting there at 50-something? Hard to say don't take him. I agree. I'm just saying I think there's a lot of pass rushers that have value in the second round. I do think there's a couple of corners that'll have value in the second round. I think you could look safety in the second round. I think there's a bigger discussion, Mad Hatter, that has to happen in terms of the draft board. But we're not quite to that point yet of setting up the draft board. I think someone else made a point earlier, and I skipped past your comment. I apologize, but they were saying basically we kind of got to get through free agency before we set draft boards, and I agree. Although I do think there are some things that, like wide receiver would be hard to imagine them going 3 straight years in the first round. Yeah. So, last position of need. I'm going to tell you guys. I sat down with Caleb, and I talked with Jalen last night, and we were watching film of the Tampa Bay game, and we were watching, in particular, the offensive line playing the running game. And after I watched the film with Caleb and I watched the film with Jalen, and we're going to discuss all this tomorrow night, guys, I got to tell you, tight end 2 climbed up on my board a lot higher. Because with Tyree Jackson going down, we can talk about the receiving options and needs. I got to be honest. We did not have a good outing from a run blocking perspective from our tight ends, man. Dallas Goedert had a really bad game. I mean, he got manhandled in this game, to be very, very polite about it. Like Joe Tryon threw him around like a rag doll. In saying that, I'm still not going to put it at 5, because I still feel like that's a really big luxury to have a tight end 2 like that. And Jack Stahl, I think, was better in blocking situations than Goddard was in that game. Now, what I will say is this. I don't know that this is truly the 5th biggest need on the team, but I think this is the thing that you could potentially upgrade at that might win you games. And that's what you guys put as your number 1 need. I'm going to come back and circle back around and say the X wide receiver position or wide receiver position. I think you have to get more options here. We need another option here. And I think it's best to go after this one in free agency. I think we all know the names. We know the players that are available in free agency. It's a matter of how much money does this team want to spend at that position. I'll say that Mike Williams is very high on my list. Allen Robinson is very much a want. But, yeah, come on, man. If Devontae Adams honestly became available and the Eagles could find a way of making that work, I'd be all for it. I just don't think they can make it work in terms of the money. Michael Thomas, same kind of argument. No doubt about it, man. I don't care that those guys are not maybe natural X receivers, Those dudes separate and they win at the NFL. At the end of the day, that's all I care about. But I will say, Allen Robinson, when he's healthy, does look like a really good compliment to Devontae Smith. Mike Williams, when he's healthy, looks like a really good compliment to Devontae Smith. DJ Shark, when he's healthy, I know the Eagles had interest in him in the draft a couple of years ago. So I don't think you can rule out a guy like DJ Shark, who's probably a more budgeted, effective, kind of option in the receiving game. Outside of some of the guys that I've mentioned, Allie, is there anyone else that, because I know you kind of talked about Braxton Berrios in a special teams role player kind of role. Yeah. Is there anyone else that you feel like maybe, we're not really discussing it and maybe we're missing out on the way of analyzing this position group?
If Hurts can get better with his deep ball, I like Cedric Wilson a lot. Of course, Dallas may or may not keep him. His numbers are good. Let's see. Not a huge fan of Christian Kirk. Michael Gallup, another Dallas free agent wide receiver. I seriously doubt that both of them will be let go, but probably one of them will be. Speaking of compliments, Valdez-Scantling from Green Bay got a nice large physique, I think, if I remember correctly, and is really good on the deep balls. Let's see. I mentioned Berrios, Keelan Cole. I mean, there's OBJ, but he's going to cost $1 million. Well, metaphorically speaking. Sammy Watkins, Jamison Crowder. That's pretty much it. I mentioned the Indianapolis kid on one of these previous ones, Zach Pascal. You seem to like that one because of the Indy fit, and he has some interesting measurables, some interesting numbers maybe. But yeah, that's pretty much the list.
Yeah. Ted, let me ask you a question because I know you're very level-headed about things. I hear what you're saying. Can't wait to see what prime wide receiver wants to come here. A lot of feelings will be hurt this free agency season. How does OBJ factor into that? I'm not saying that OBJ is an option for the Eagles. I don't know that to be true. But OBJ saying that the Eagles made his radar can be looked upon in a couple of ways. Number one way it can be looked upon is like they're going to try to link Howie Roseman to any free agent just to try to drum up interest in said player. No doubt about it. But you can also look at it, that's genuine statements that maybe this organization is looked upon a lot more favorably this year than it was last year, to where it definitely seemed like we had some convincing to do for people to come here. I don't know that we're in as bad a standing as people think, to be honest. Does that mean that we're going to get the Devontae Adams and the Michael Thomases? Probably not, Ted. I mean, I think you and I are kind of on the same page there. That's probably very unlikely to happen. And Allen Robinson, we probably have an outside shot. There's probably an outside shot of something like that. But I think the Mike Williams and the DJ Sharks and those type of guys are, probably, Cedric Wilson, of course. I think those dudes are probably far more realistic. But I do think that maybe the perception is changing. I mean, I don't know how to take OBJ's comments. I mean, OBJ is not exactly the model of, can you really read too much of what he's saying? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It seems to be a game at times with him. But certainly one way of looking at it is that the image of the Eagles has changed from this year, from, last year to this year in terms of the offseason approach. So it seems like maybe we're being looked upon a little bit more favorably than we once were. Allie, what do you think about that? I'm really curious to see what you think about that, about the image of the Eagles.
We doubled our wins this year to last. We more than doubled them. So if the perception around the league hasn't also gotten twice as good, there's something wrong. I think the media, dislikes the Eagles far more than the players do. And I think, players are pros. It's about the check. They want the coach. They want the quarterback as a leader that's getting better as a passer. They want, various things. I think wide receiver might be the most difficult position to recruit because the Eagles like to run the ball a lot and Hurts is still developing as a passer. But I think they see – I think last year was a really, really bad year. I think this year, was a lot better. And I think because of that, players at least are taking the team more seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Matt Hatter, I don't think OBJ is a bad guy per se. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I don't necessarily know that you can believe everything that comes out of his mouth. That's more so what I'm saying. Like, especially when you're dealing with contract and trying to drum up interest when you know you're unhappy in LA because you know you're probably going to be the third receiving target there if you try to stay there. I think he's just trying to push people into I think the league kind of has a beat that he's leaving LA after this season. So you get him. He's just trying to drum up his value, I think. That's what I'm trying to get around to. He's trying to drum up his value more. So this is what I'm going to do to kind of close out today's topic, guys, because we're about to head into football Sunday again. We got some playoff football coming up. I just wanted to kind of give you guys a live stream to talk about. But in closing, next week, so for next week's discussion, guys, this is what I would like to do. Let's resume this topic again next Saturday, chat. So all you guys that are still here, this is what I want you guys to do because we're going to open it up next week. I want you guys to come up with what you think the top 5 needs are for the Philadelphia Eagles because we're going to do more of a call-in model next week. All right? So come up with your top 5 need for the Eagles and then come up with where you value guys in the draft, where you value guys in free agency, and how you think, because we got to factor in what Howie in the front office may or may not do, where you think some of these fits might be. And we'll kind of open it up to kind of a conversation where you guys can come in and join us. You can ask Allie and I some questions, and then we'll give you our feedback on like where we think things should happen, guys. I think this is a good question, so I'm going to pull this one in real fast, guys. So DeGod said, what about the decision of paying Sanders? It's complex. It's complex, guys. It's very complex. I can't say that I know, man. It depends upon how much money he wants. When he's healthy and he's in games, he's producing like a top third of the league running back. I wouldn't put him in the top 5 or 6 guys. I think it's a little too much, but he's up there when he's on the field and he's healthy. Health has been an issue. Durability has been an issue with him. I don't know. It depends upon the contract value for me, to be honest. It depends on how much money is he looking for. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all so much. Don't forget, next week, come in, let us know. What do you think the top 5 needs are as you see them on this football team? And we're talking about taking the next step forward. Like, what do you think honestly has to be in consideration? We didn't talk about a contact bounce back. That could be on your list. We talked about a tight end too, but none of us put it on there in the top 5. There are definitely some things that could still go on here that we could, some areas of needs that are still kind of can be debatable here. I think so personally. Allie, thank you so much for coming on and talking.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
All right, guys. Next week, real quick before we sign off, who's everybody got in these games coming up? What do you think, Allie? You got the Rams or you got Tampa Bay?
I think I'm going to go with the Rams, actually.
The Rams, okay.
Yeah, I think Tampa Bay's got some issues this season.
How about I think probably the bigger game of the day. What do you think about the Chargers? Wow, it's the Chargers' wish. What do you think about the Chiefs and that Buffalo game?
I'm going Bills.
You're going Bills?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm definitely going Bills with you. I'm going to say Bills just because I think they're catching fire at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tampa Bay is going to win, man. I don't want them to. I really don't want them to, but I think it's going to be Tampa Bay and San Francisco in the NFC Championship game. The last thing I want to see is Brady win another Super Bowl. I mean, how many do you need?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But what I saw on film for their defense, man, Todd Bowles is underrated. Todd Bowles is underrated. He is so underrated as a coach. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all. We got some Rams and Bills, some Tampa and Chiefs coming in. Cameron said the Rams. Alex said I'll go with Tampa and Buffalo. Shonuff said the Bills. All right, y'all. Appreciate you guys. Next Saturday, we're going to do this again. We'll probably go more towards the night. We'll probably a little bit, later on in the night. Mark G said Bills win first Super Bowl. And head coach graduated from my high school a year after me. That's cool, man. All right, y'all. Next weekend,